So as we get started then today, as I mentioned, we are going to be speaking on optimizing communication strategies, and I'm one of the interest group speakers speaking on behalf of IAWHP. Today we're going to, I've got wanted to introduce myself a little bit before we get into the meat and potatoes of it all. I'm from Canada. Those of you who received my email indicating Canada A, I am from Canada. I'm from London, Ontario, and you can see a map there. We're smuck in the middle between Toronto and Detroit. I met several folks from Michigan while we were in San Diego, so we certainly shared, certainly knowing where we all live. These are my kids, Olivia and Jacob. It's Canada Day very, very soon in a couple days, and so they had their last day of school is red and white, so that's Jacob and Olivia. Jacob is 9 and Olivia is 7. We are also a very active family, triathlon, marathon running, kids are into soccer, etc., so we're very, very busy. I was exposed to ACSM, oh my goodness, probably close to 16 years ago when I attended my first one. And I attended the Health and Fitness Summit very soon thereafter. I then became aware of a group called the International Association for Worksite Health Promotion. And from there, speaking with Reed and some of the board of directors this past visit in San Diego, this is where we are today, and I'm happy to be hosting a webinar on communication. In terms of a little bit more about us, I'm the owner of a Canadian employee health and wellness company called Employee Wellness Solutions Network. So just to sort of put that all into perspective for you. So as we get started here, I do want this to be as collaborative as possible. I'm just going to take us through a few objectives that I would like to accomplish today. That said, I would also love to be able to hear from you, hear your experiences, hopefully share some insights on really what the purpose is around the whole worksite health promotion and workplace wellness programming go. This particular piece, so I wanted to spend a little bit of time on specifically communication strategies, really what works, what doesn't, and what maybe you've experienced in the work that you do. I'm going to finish off with a few slides around the association because some of you on the call today are not members, and that's part of today as well, is to just introduce you to the association and some of the awesome benefits that come along with it. And then I'd also like to finish off with, I've nailed down a couple more webinar dates. I'm certainly trying to stay away from some of my interest group partners who are doing webinars as well and with different things. So I've dodged those and we'll be able to share those dates with you as well. So as we get started, I always like to start with this, and those of you who were in my presentation in San Diego probably remember this cartoon. They tried adding healthy snacks to the office vending machine, but all that rotting fruit made the candy bars taste bad. I mean, really, who has experienced this? You try something, you put it in, you implement it, and you hope to goodness people come. And the reality is some of the times they don't. And this is where the frustrations, I think, with our industry lie, where we try something and we don't get the engagement and participation we want, and then it comes down to, well, maybe it just doesn't work at all. So there are some experiences that we have found over the last 14 years in being associated with the ACSM and sharing in the Fitness Summit, Health and Fitness Summit, and also doing this in our work. So we do see that this particular angle is certainly felt across the board, that when we're not getting the engagement or participation we want. So really when it comes down to the purposes of looking at the most effective wellness programs out there, and this is really stemming from the research, looking at really what makes sense pertaining to comprehensivity of a wellness program. And we know that leadership needs to be supported. We also know that we need to integrate a strategic plan and communicate that, which can also be a difficulty in some of our cultures, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, how can we ensure sustainability? There was a really great article, and I'm going to follow it up from this call, that was shared with one of our board members, and it was pertaining to creating a culture, not a climate of wellness. So oftentimes if someone or an organization feels that they have a problem, or there's their aging workforce, or they have sick time issue, or they have a retention issue, it's almost like patchwork. Well, we have to do something, we have to do something. And the reality is if we can really start to bring this to light in a way that ties everything together to start to create that culture. And Phil is one of our speakers on an interest group that does talk on this particular piece and that culture side. And this is really what it comes down to is how can we ensure effectiveness? So the first one I'd like to share with you, and please feel free to jot in questions, thoughts, comments, anything that you know is coming to light, is optimizing communications. The first one I'd like to mention is really getting to know your leaders. And you know, really what it comes down to, if one were to poll an audience, poll an employee base, and really find out what their leaders are supporting, what their leaders want, what their leaders view the company as. Some organizations have this down pat, some of them don't. And so really what it comes down to is how can we ensure that whatever wellness initiative we do, be it a pedometer challenge, be it a health fair, or bringing in a speaker, or doing all of the above, what are your leaders doing, or are they not doing? And this is one of the angles that I think is really, really important. And I'm sure everybody on the call today will concur that really what it comes down to is that leadership support. So how do you get it? So this is a bit of a snapshot of looking at hierarchy of an organization. And not to say that this is what all organizations look like, certainly, but this gives you a bit of a look. We have the C-suite people, and the C-suite people are those in the CEO, COO, president, VP, executive leadership teams. And we often find that if there is an initiative that is implemented at the worksite or organizational level, coming from the lead down to middle management is one aspect of communicating. And I don't know if anybody on the call can concur with this or agree or disagree with this, but really that middle management supervisory role piece is, I find the level of most toughness or most difficulty sometimes in getting the message through. Can anybody comment on that in terms of some of their experiences in working with those little middle managers or supervisors? If anyone wanted to jump in here, please let me know and I can unmute you. I'll let you mull that over while I take a look here at any of the questions coming through. Oh, I see a question here. One second. It's tough to get management. You're right, Barry. It really is. And sometimes it comes down to how can we link in the wellness initiative, wellness program design, really into, and I find this to be probably one of the most powerful ways in which we can get leadership on board, is how much you can influence or be part of the corporate planning or the corporate strategic plan discussion. I'll give you an example. One of our organizations in which we work is a utilities company, and I literally got an email last week that says, Megan, we want to run a corporate planning strategy session and we want you in the room. I thought that was just great. They see the value, they want it in black and white, they want it written down that the wellness program is important and engagement's important, and that's important to management. And so if we can get more alignment with the corporate structure or corporate strategic direction, it really can hold your wellness program a little bit tighter. So think about that. It is tough to get sometimes management on board, picking away at them and going to them and sharing the obviously the benefits, and I mean that has been discussed. Nico Pronk has discussed this forever on the support from the management level. But if we can get support at that level pertaining to some of the areas of corporate planning, that tends to be a little bit helpful, or more helpful than not. So I encourage you to think about that, and how can we get to those believers and how do we turn those believers around. Now in terms of the next level is going from C-suite or the leadership team down to the frontline staff. And this is another communication strategy I find to be very helpful with successful, great wellness programs. Long gone are the days where a broad stroke approach was of interest to organizations. Wellness doesn't work for everybody in the exact same format. The information dripping, all of that is really great tactic, but really when it comes down to how can we show we care, how can management show they care in terms of the culture, and this is where we can go. So in a simple memo to support or encourage staff to participate, attend the lunch and learn, attend the health fair, giving staff a bit of extra time to participate in these things can be beneficial. Not easy if you don't have a willing management team, and I think that's a whole other argument for, unfortunately, for another day. In terms of the communication, though, between middle managers and frontline staff, and I would love for you to think about this and throw your comments at me as well in the question box, or let me know if you'd like to speak. The middle managers speaking to or encouraging their frontline staff is also can be a bit of a barrier. And so ways in which we have found that to be helpful is if your middle managers or supervisors have health and safety meetings or have staff meetings they're communicating a new policy procedure. Can health and wellness, can health promotion be part of those meeting minutes? Can those opportunities, can your wellness champions be the ones to really help spread the word? So these are all, again, layers of communication that I have found, and that the research has shown that have really helped instigate really a strategic plan. So thinking of all of the levels of your organizations in which you're working, we find that this leveled approach can be quite beneficial in communicating the right message. So many wellness programs will not have all of these levels covered. Some of them have excellent levels, and some of them have mediocre levels, and some of them have levels that really don't care. And that does make things more difficult. But if we can start to think of ways in which we can get the message in front of people in different avenues, I do find that to be quite helpful. Now, in terms of another interest group that has formed and that is being discussed is through the Wellness Champion creation. And this is something that also it does become very important within a wellness program. We find that the Wellness Champion Network or the Wellness Committee, depending on if you use both, either, or, it really does come down to the people that we have in place. Are they excitable people? Are they good communicators? Are they leaders with their groups? Are they able to really get that message across to who they want? Are they the healthiest people in the organization, or do you have people that aren't the healthiest but are well respected? And that really does come down to how can we ensure we have the right group of people? I find that the whole notion from being voluntold to participate in a committee to being really wanting to be part of the change, the culture change, it does become a really great difference. And so if we can start to move these just another committee to sit on to more of a owning the strategic plan, owning what the game plan is going to be, and owning what the goal is for the organization, these wellness champions and or wellness community members can really get on board and can be really great ambassadors for your message. So I encourage you to, again, give me your feedback. A few more folks have come on the call. You are on mute just to keep the distractions at a minimum. But if you do have anything to add to this, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm happy to take you off mute if you'd like to contribute to the conversation. There's also a question box at the bottom of your panel. So wellness champion creation is massively important, I find, in that whole strategic move to make sure that the messages are getting communicated to your staff. And this does become very important. Some organizations like to term the wellness champions. So a specific time frame. Some of them just is never ending. Again, it does come down to what your strategic plan looks like and really what your organizational makeup is. I highly recommend, though, a cross-section of your entire organization, some leaders, some middle managers, some frontline staff, departmental support, a nice cross-section of every single shift if possible. Really does come down to that side. The more people you have in your court, the more people that you have to communicate what you want. So the second strategy that I wanted to share and hopefully gather a bit of feedback and insight from you is really getting to know who your audience is. And you know what? There's so many different types of organizations and industries, and knowing who your people are and how to communicate your wellness strategies to them does become very, very important. And so the second strategy I wanted to share a little bit about is really starting to get to know your audience. Do you have a millennial-based organization? Is it fast? Is it new? Is it tech-based? Do you have an aging workforce? Because really, as we communicate program design and program implementation, there really are two different sets of people, completely different sets of people. If you have a mishmash of millennials and new hires and aging folks that have been there for 40 years, etc., then there obviously will be some changes you may want to consider when you're communicating your wellness program strategy. And so in terms of taking a look at this a little further, we know that in terms of the adult learning, we know that it does come down to, at the end of the day, what works for adult, whether you're younger or older. We know that repetition works. There needs to be a way that you can communicate your message in a way that is repeated and repeated and repeated. Now, as you'll see in the next few slides, it doesn't necessarily mean being repeated the exact same way all the time. There's a different approach than what we call the layer on approach as we communicate what we want to achieve with our programming. The second thing that we know that works with adult learning is bite-sized messages. Not too hard, applicable to them, things that they can digest, chew on, digest, and decide to make changes or not. It has to be meaningful to that person. So obviously, something that is resoundingly familiar to that person, they're going to hold on to that. So how can we have that real emotional tie to some of our communication strategies to optimize that engagement? And then lastly, but certainly not least, is the supportive environment. How can the culture, just like that the article that I'm going to be sending you in a link format following today, is how can you create that culture versus patch-like climate of wellness? Culture versus climate, I love it. How can we try to have a supportive culture in place to help these millennials to 60 years of age plus? How can we get these folks to engage? And so that really does come down to how do we communicate to the different groups. This is, again, looking at not the millennial group. This is looking at the aging workforce. So those folks that have been around for a long time, that have, again, have had some duration with the organization, that, have had potentially a wellness program in place, that might not be getting engagement from the older folks. How can we start to communicate what we want within this group? So really it comes down to meeting them where they are. We do know that what's important to the older folks, and this is, we're just doing an overview today for our first webinar. I want to get into, over the next 2 times we meet, one in September and one in December, really get down to some specifics on discussion points on some of this. So as we look at that aging workforce, we do know that they don't really care too much about the whole weight loss thing, the weight loss challenges. They're past that. They want to focus more on how can I have more energy and how can I feel more alive. And that's what we find, that with the older population, they don't care necessarily about the whole weight loss thing. They've been there, done that. And I think some of us on the call today will probably feel the same way. You know, how many times do we put in, say, a weight loss program, and you get the same people doing it all the time, which is great for those people, but how can we extend it beyond just that small sample of your population? They don't necessarily care too much about brand new concepts. So the digital world, it's really kind of not, I don't believe, not the way to go, the technological-based virtual digital programming for an older population. They're not into this new concept, this new world. They're more wanting information on modifying what they're currently doing. Functional fitness, how can we communicate how to be more active in their later years, in their retirement years? How can we tie through your communication strategies that notion of feeling good in retirement when they decide to leave? Because realistically the boomers are hanging around a lot longer these times. One, people are living a lot longer, and two, they might not be ready to retire financially. And so these are some of the different things that these older folks need to be sort of shown when it comes to the whole program design and communicating what we want in terms of our wellness messaging. They care a lot about sleep. I mean, who doesn't? Sleep is a big thing. If there is a goal modification or goal achievement platform out there that you're wanting to implement within your strategy and communicating that's important, they need to be achievable for this population. They have to be in control. They can't be told what to do. They've been there, done that. So there does need to be some of that choice, ability for them to, again, have and feel like they have control over the situation. Be light on the virtual resources, communicating that way they're not going to get. They really do believe, and this, again, the aging workforce is something I think realistically most workforces is that face-to-face. So the more you can have your wellness champions, your wellness committee members, you as program directors or organizers of your wellness strategy, the more face-to-face you can be with this population, the much more easily communicated your message will be. They're going to miss a lot of the technological, as I said, the technological and virtual resources. You're not going to be really in tune with that. So the more face-to-face you can be with them, the better. Can anybody share on the call today any other comments, suggestions, thoughts on the aging workforce as we communicate with this population? Anyone want to comment or share in the conversation? Anyone feel like they'd like to hop on and share? No? Okay, I'll keep going and then we'll see how we fare after. The third strategy in the layering or the communication piece is really knowing your walls. And this does come down to what your organization's infrastructure is set up, what's available, where to put we call these point of decision information, to start having them think about changing behavior. Because that's really what it comes down to with any wellness strategy, is having that ability to have that sustainable approach to wellness. And that really is what it comes down to. So we like to call this the layer on approach. And this layer on approach is really a terminology that does come down to how can you most effectively communicate your message. And it is much different than throwing something on a wall like a poster and that be it, or posting something in the kitchen or in the high traffic areas, in the coffee shops, whatever you are, wherever you're doing your work, and hoping people see that message. What we like to call this way is a drip effect or a layer on approach. And so the exact same information is communicated in 5 or 6 different ways. That's really what it comes down to. So how can you do that? Well, you'll see there on the right-hand side, effective communication. Some organizations have intranet or media boards or both. Use both. Really use as many vessels of communicating your message as possible. Intranet that's accessible by staff. It's oftentimes, I often ask employers if there's a wellness tab that we could create to have on the intranet, front page. You know, some of them are going to be, oh, we'll put you under benefits, we'll put you under HR, and sometimes it's 4 or 5 different clicks to get to you. Really try to get the wellness piece at the forefront if at all possible. Some IT departments are going to be a bit more available for you than others. You may want to designate one of your wellness champions or wellness committee members to take on the updates on the intranet. So that's one thing. The media boards, another really great opportunity. The bigger TV screens, whatever access you have to get those visual cues in front of folks' faces is really important. Do you have a corporate newsletter? So not necessarily a wellness newsletter, but is there a corporate newsletter that goes out on a quarterly, semi-annual, annual basis? And can you ask for a small little paragraph size or a page or a quarter page, however much room you can ask for, to have that wellness message available on a drip, again, the layer on or the drip approach. Whenever a corporate strategy newsletter goes out, there's a wellness piece attached to it. There's kind of a subliminal message that way. If it's a corporately drawn up newsletter and wellness is included, it's much more accepted as a corporate structure or corporate strategic planning piece than just kind of on its own. So if you can integrate that, that's a really great tip. Pay stub, most organizations are electronic based now, not necessarily pay stub, but that's another option. You also want to think about some visual cues. Oftentimes program design work is done via campaign, so you might have a 3 or 4 month campaign on a specific topic, and how can you create that same information that you want to get across with your millennial and or aging workforce, but layer in different ways. Posters as cues, intranet, same information, media boards, same information with the same pictures, maybe in the bathrooms, get some posters in the bathrooms, and then email, text, whatever other means to get your message across. Most of the time, folks rely too heavily on email and it gets lost. So if there's a way to duplicate the information in ways that really do get to the masses, that's one of the suggested ways in which we want to try and have people think. So layer your message as effectively as you possibly can in different avenues, and that does tend to be a really great way of doing it. The second layer on approach strategy or thing to think about is really knowing your space. So one of the things we spoke about in San Diego with several of us is, you've got a head office and then you have satellite offices. And oftentimes there's a bit of anger or why do they get everything kind of mentality when there is a focus on just head office or just corporate getting everything. So one of the ways in which I find optimizing communication strategies really gets a program designer or program director a long way is being as inclusive as humanly possible. Whatever head office gets, satellite office gets. Posters, they get the same posters. Email campaigns, they get the same email campaigns. Media boards, they may have them, they may not. What other avenues can you use to get to those people? So it's a simple thing, and yes, some of us will probably say, well, yes, of course, we're going to include everybody, but just as a reminder that when it comes down to optimizing communication, I think that's really key. What's other space you have access to for your program design? Boardrooms, grass space, is there a movable tables in your boardrooms? I know here in Ontario we get terrible winters, so we have to think very innovatively in the wintertime when we're talking about on-site exercise or de-stress stretching or yoga or what have you, is really trying to come up with space to do this. And so some organizations will have more space than others, but thinking about that. Integrating the wellness message and communicating that through high usage places like cafeterias. So some of you coming from neighbors of us down in the States that are on the call today, you may have organizations or larger organizations that have cafeterias or third-party vendors that come in and do the food prep, etc. for your organization. One of the things that I like to do is, again, that whole notion of optimizing communication. How can we get that message to staff? Is meeting them where they are. Is the cafeteria does seem to be a common place for folks to be. And so I find that if you could have a conversation or just a suggestion of even one of your wellness champions to connect with the cafeteria folks to see what opportunities there might be to collaborate and integrate your wellness message into what they're serving. So one of the things that we've done in the past is called Wellness Wednesdays. And Wellness Wednesdays, we help the cafeteria folks highlight certain ingredients or foods or meals that they're preparing. We prepare a poster, we have it available, and it's a great speaking point for staff so they get to know what they're eating and why. They're having a fish sandwich or fish taco that day with a salad. What are the benefits of fish? Why omega fats, etc. So it really does put a nice message to what they're consuming. And because people are, tend to be very in tune with food, it's a great way to meet them halfway. So integrating that within different opportunities is really important. The other way I find that we can really start to optimize communications through the wellness side is trying to integrate your message in different ways through other programs that might be available. So you might have EAP or EFAP that is dedicated to helping staff with mental health and mental health concerns. Might you be able to, again, tie in the wellness front, being more proactive, preventative promotion way, so integrating both of them together? Is there a way that you can start to see some of that synergy between different programs? Other benefits programs might be available that you might be able to leverage for your message. So this whole piece in communication, I think, does come down to the whole strategic piece and the integration of piece on trying to ensure we're really not letting any, not having too many loose ends, so to speak, when we're trying to get our message across. So this, and those of you who attended the ACSM conference this past year, this will look familiar to you. This is a strategic wellness program that gives you a bit of an idea as to what layering on of approach might look like. So this is, this particular organization did the health risk assessment. We knew that weight management and fitness were number 1 and 2, so we started to look at ways in which we could layer on the wellness message in different ways because, again, the population, people learn a bit differently. But we know, again, that bite-sized repetition does work. So we offered, as you can see there, down the left-hand side are all the different programs within our toolbox, and across the top is January to June. And we just plotted in some of the different programs. And this tool has actually, it was funny, a lot of folks from ACSM connected with me afterwards and asked for this tool. I'm happy to share it. Is looking at how you can plot your wellness strategy in a way that still hits on a monthly consistent basis, because again, if you're just thinking wellness as once or twice a year, it's going to lose its flair. Absolutely. You need to have that consistent messaging throughout the entire year. Every single month something is going on. It doesn't have to be big, but it has to be something to continue to thread that message. And that's one of the strategies we find with the communication, the layer on approach, is really trying to have this program speak for itself more or less. So it just gives you some ideas here. This particular, we had some healthy weights workshops. We had Continue to Move. We had some walking routes and some stretching we did to facilitate in the springtime. We had some healthy eating programs for the whole Healthy Weight for You campaign. It's all campaign based. We had some stretching, some healthy snacking. We really started to also plot in some reporting, so we were also able to provide management with that particular, again, information that they needed. And so this I found to be quite beneficial in our discussions with the folks that attended the conference this past April, is this particular way of showing and communicating what the plan is goes a really long way. So if you're not sure what you want to do next month, then if you can, try to pull your wellness champions together and plan out 4 or 5 or 6 months in advance. It takes a lot of that program design stress off your shoulders as well, as we all know. So it does give a little bit of, again, layering and showing you how to communicate some of these different things. Now, before I start into some of the other association information and then wrap up with some other webinar dates, I'd love feedback. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to, again, get your comments and suggestions, feedback pertaining to some of the information we saw today. We spoke about knowing your leaders, knowing your audience, and knowing your space. So what are anybody have any other comments they'd like to share before we carry on? So there's a question that just came in about something around, just paraphrasing here, shift workers. How do you get shift workers involved, communicate to shift workers? Okay, great question. The shift worker piece is one of those things that, again, if we're looking at a population and not having buy-in or engagement from all different layers of frontline middle managers or leaders from pertaining to the shift work, there needs to be some change in that, specifically in your wellness champion creation or wellness committee member creation is including some shift people in that, on that committee. The reasoning behind that is the shift workers, they have specific needs. Sleep, exercise, eating, all similar things to sort of a 9-to-5 worker would have. It's just their entire system is completely switched different now and again. So there needs to be some focusing in on those specifics for those shift workers and building in some programs and awareness and promotion on healthy ways in which shift workers can be will really go a long way. So that is one of the things that we find. There's another comment here. You were right about a champion not having to be the most healthy. I think of Sophia, not healthy, but she's committed to the program. And she recruits the largest walking team. Perfect example. So this is the piece on the wellness champion side, is if we can find those well-respected, might not be the healthiest, but happy people who love to help out in whatever way they can, they're the people that really do start to come along board, and they can pull other people away. And I haven't talked about it today. I'm going to wait until our September meeting to talk a little bit about this. But this is really what we call the peer influence effect. So we see that respect to our peer can really start to influence behavior. And so when we're able to influence behavior, be it pulling 45 plus people together for a walking group, I mean, how awesome is that? Great example. So thanks for sharing that. Are there any other comments, maybe questions or concerns that you're having with your wellness strategies that you're not getting buy-in or you're not getting engagement at any level? Does anybody else want to chime in on this discussion before I move on here? I should mention, I am also recording this webinar, so I'm happy to share this with you in a link format following if you've forgotten or missed something, so I'm happy to do that as well, just to make that mention. Okay, so we'll continue then. If there's anything else that does come up, please, please, please include it. So in terms of a little bit more about the association, so the association really does provide amazing benefits to those of us who have been participating in the association for a while. Why join it? Well, there is a membership fee to be part of it. This particular webinar that we're doing today is free for members. And free for first-timers. So if you are on the call today and you're not a member and you'd love to hear more about some of the best practices and some of the different ways that us as professionals get the engagement, get participation, and have successful wellness programs, it's a really great networking opportunity to start to talk about ways in which we can all help each other out. So IAWHP members have access to lots of different things. And so here are a couple things that you do have access to. You, first of all, have an electronic access to lots of different resources, ACSM's resources, worksite health promotion. You also get the e-newsletter from IAWHP. What I have really found to be helpful are some of the models and samples that some of the gurus in our industry, like Nico Pronk, have shared and developed and shared very freely. And so there's lots of PowerPoint presentations, articles, white papers, information about how to make our programs better. It's a wonderful association that everybody is doing the same thing. Why not leverage off of one another and share what works, what doesn't, so we can all learn to make our programs better. So I found that to be really helpful. A couple other things, you'll also see notices on upcoming publications. You do get discounts as well off of ACSM dues if you're an ACSM member as well. You also have best practice if you have students that, or you know students that are really trying to figure out what they want to do with their work, or potentially coworkers of your own that want to see what they want to do later in life. There's also some career services and resources that are also available to members. What I love about this too, and I'm just speaking from experience and volunteering as a speaker with the group, but there's an online membership directory that has absolutely everything you need to connect with professionals by name, location, or specialty, and you can connect with them. It's a wonderful networking opportunity. There's also, as I learned in San Diego, leadership opportunities. So now I'm on the webinar committee. So being able to share some professional advice and some ideas pertaining to program design, implementation, evaluation, communication, culture, wellness champion creation. There's so many wonderful ways that our members are learning. My favorite, I think, of all is our yearly national networking reception. So this happens at pre-con at the ACSM conference typically, and this is a really great opportunity to get together once a year. We do some deep dives. We have roll up our sleeves and get lots of information from some of the pros on how to overcome some of the challenges we're having, how to make our programs better. There's also regional events that are also great. So there are lots of benefits being part of this association. There's also lots of learning opportunities. You as a member can also partake in some webinars and to accumulate some continuing education credits should you need those. There's an archive of audio recordings from all sorts of webinars. I mean, really, the benefits are endless when it comes down to it, and I hope that some of you on the call today, whom I met in San Diego, will consider. I know I've dripped on you before to consider joining our association, because it really does provide a great opportunity. It's the only association that actually has this networking opportunity for professionals who run programs and who create programs and design programs and implement them. So it's a great resource. Of course, there's a fee, a very small fee, being a professional member or a student member, so all the information is there, and I'll just finish off with this particular one. You can learn more at IAWHP.org. It is an affiliate society of ACSM, so we know it's reputable. Again, lots of fantastic leaders on the board of directors that are from all over the world, I should say. All over the world. I met Argentina, Brazil at the pre-conference. We met Germany. Fascinating. Spain. Fascinating to hear how workplaces are continuing to be healthy and all across the planet. So it's a really wonderful way to share and get information and share information. To wrap it up, and then I'm hoping someone will have some more comments and questions and maybe some suggestions or agreeances or disagreeances. But our next webinars that we're going to be having, and I will be sending out as follow-up to today, the recording today, as well as the really great article on culture versus climate of wellness. I'm happy to send that to you as well. But the next two webinars are Thursday, September, sorry, I'm just going to move my panel here. Thursday, September the 28th at 2, Eastern Time, and Thursday, December the 21st at 2 Eastern Time as well. So I'm dodging, I believe Barry is doing a couple of his presentations in September and December as well, so I wanted to bypass his dates and continue to offer, and we want to continue this conversation on communications. So I'd be really, really happy to hear, even via email, you have my email from the invitation today, but if you had any angle of communication strategies and optimizing communication that you'd like to do a bit more of a deep dive or more of a discussion around a concept, please let me know, and I'm happy to put some information together for you for the fall as we start to get into our potentially our fall programming. What are the fall programs we want to put in place, and how do we want to optimize communications with those? Let's have a discussion and talk about that, and I look forward to hearing from you at whatever level you feel comfortable, either right now as a bit of a comment or question or suggestion, or through email as well. I'm more than happy to respond. So I want to open it up now for just a couple more minutes on any discussion points that we'd like to ask or share, and why don't we start with that? Any more questions, comments, thoughts? Okay, 1 second here. Yeah, so this particular comment is coming down. You know what, Barry, I'm going to unmute you. Hopefully you're ready for this. Barry, are you there?
Yes.
Oh, yes, perfect. Can you share your comment with the group, please, that you just sent me?
Sure. I just want to reinforce with you that you're right about the middle management. The challenge is going to be there. I've noticed that all along, and I'm still struggling with it after all these years. I think there's two main reasons. One is they have a very deep work ethic. They want to work. They basically think they're on call 24/7, so they're just constantly working, which is great. You got to realize that a wellness program is there to serve the business, and the business needs to make money and make products and services. So we're kind of a stepchild in some ways. So I understand that part. But when they do come, it's valuable. When they sit in there with the others and ask questions, you can't pay for something like that. It's just great. The other reason why I think that it's difficult and the challenge is because most of them are wellness savvy already. Most of the managers may have been educated in schools about fitness and wellness nutrition and what we're talking about. Some of them have come up from the ranks, have been in the program, and they're savvy about it anyway. So they kind of feel like they don't have to join in on the actual events, but they'll participate in the big things like the health fair, things like that. They bring their families, things like that. A caveat on that is I have a coup I'm very proud of, that next month in our Lunch and Learn, we have the president of the company doing a cooking demonstration called Cooking with Kevin. And we're expecting large numbers.
Wow, that's great. Cooking with Kevin, what's he making?
It's a wok. It's 3 proteins that he's going to marinate ahead of time, show everybody what that is, give them the skills to take this home and have the children actually participate the day before in the marination, and show it how easy it is to throw it on top of certain vegetables.
Oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really does help if folks can see someone in management participate. That does come. But not every organization has willing people, which is a huge struggle, and I think that's really across the board. If you don't have a management team that is supported or supportive, it does make it like Mount Everest sometimes, for sure. So any other comments or questions or anything you'd like to share? Anybody else? Okay. Well, thanks so much, everybody, for sharing. And I think the middle management piece is one that we could maybe do a bit more of a look in September around the middle management communicating through through them. How do we do that? I think that would be a really helpful discussion. If there are any other thoughts or comments or suggestions for future topics of interest, I'd be happy to, again, get those to me, so we'll be able to provide a webinar that will provide maybe some more insight on some of these topics. Thanks so much. I'll be on the call here for another couple of minutes. If you do want to stay on the call, and if there are any other questions that you may have that you'd like to ask or share some stories, I'd love to hear them. We do have the webinar open for another 5 or 6 minutes, so feel free. I'll be here for you, and if you have any other thing to say. Otherwise, stay tuned for our next webinar invitation in September. Thanks, everybody.